Hi everyone! In today's video I would like to chat with you a little bit about different types of plants and how does it all work, because I think that's a really useful information that can save you a lot of frustration, especially if you're a beginner gardener. I wish I knew a little bit more about different types of plants when I started my container gardening journey. Had I known these things before, I would probably avoid many mistakes and many disappointments, because I'm guilty of throwing away perfectly healthy perennials at the end of the season just because I thought they were dead. And they just simply went dormant. So let's chat a little bit about it and let's demystify this topic. Okay, so there's many ways we can divide plants, but what matters the most, I think, for a gardener is first we can divide the plants into deciduous and evergreen. So deciduous plants are plants that drop their leaves at the end of the season. Evergreen plants keep their foliage year round. They still shed their leaves, just not all at once like deciduous plants do. They do it more gradually. And it's a good idea, no matter how large or small your garden is, to have some deciduous plants and some evergreen plants, because deciduous plants usually put on a really beautiful show during those warmer seasons, but then when they go dormant in winter and there's not much left in the garden, it's nice to have some evergreen plants as well. It's nice to have some pop of greenery, and it's nice to have something beautiful to look at, even if it's just through the window. Okay, so when we finally start to divide plants into different types, we can start to talk about trees and shrubs, and conifers included. And these are woody perennials. It means they can live for many years. And like a really basic difference between a tree and a shrub is that trees usually have a single trunk and then a network of branches growing from it, and they are usually larger than shrubs. And then shrubs are usually smaller and they have a network of branches growing directly from the base of the plant. But the difference between a tree and a shrub can be a little bit blurry sometimes, because obviously we have small trees and large shrubs, and then we have a multi-trunk trees and shrubs that are trained into standards. Then we have herbaceous perennials, and herbaceous means they have soft, tender green stems rather than those woody of trees and shrubs. And perennials are plants that live for more than 3 years. And we can talk about evergreen perennials, like for example heucheras or hellebores, that keep their foliage year round. And then there are perennial plants that die down to the ground level at the end of the season, like for example hostas or bruneras, and then they come back again next spring. Then we can talk about biennial plants. Biennial plants are plants that live for 2 years. So they usually produce foliage in the first year, and then they bloom the next year. And some example of biennial plants would be forget-me-nots or foxgloves. Then we have annual plants, and I think that this group of plants is the most confusing, and here is the reason why. A true annual flower or an annual plant is a plant that completes its life cycle within 1 year. So it germinates, it grows, it blooms, it sets seed, and then it dies, all within 1 year. And a true annual flower will be something like sunflower, cosmos, or nigella, so love in a mist. And these are true annual flowers that complete their life cycle within 1 year. But oftentimes you will hear people refer to plants like petunias, geraniums, pelargoniums, coleus, or impatiens as annual flowers. And that's technically not true, because these plants are perennial. So that means they can live for many years, but because they come from either tropical or subtropical climates, that means they are not very frost hardy. So we usually grow them as seasonal plants, and then we get rid of them at the end of the season because they wouldn't survive winter in our temperate climates. But that doesn't change the fact that they are indeed true perennials. They are just frost tender perennials. So technically, if you wanted to, you could grow your petunias, your geraniums, your coleus, your impatiens for many, many years, but you will have to protect them from winter frost, because if you leave them outside, they will die in most climates. And then we have one small group of plants that, well, technically they are still annuals, but they are short-lived annuals, so we call them ephemerals. And one example would be, for example, poppy. Usually poppies, they complete their life cycle within a couple of months from germination to setting seed. But one advantage of ephemeral plants is that they usually produce a ton of seed, and they usually self-seed really easily. Okay, so now that the difference between different types of plants is a little bit more clear, there's one last really important information I would like to share with you today, and it's about perennial plants. So as we said, perennials are plants that live for more than 3 years. Can be a tree, can be shrub, can be herbaceous perennial. But whether the plant actually lives for more than 3 years, whether the plant even survives the first year in your garden, depends a lot on your hardiness zone. So the world is divided into 13 growing zones, 13 hardiness zones, 1 to 13. 1 being the coldest, 13 being the warmest. But this only takes in consideration how cold it gets in winter. So winters in zone 1 are the coldest, and winters in zone 13 are the warmest. So if you don't know what's your hardiness zone, you can easily check it online. You can type the name of your country and then add hardiness zones, and it will show you the map of your country divided into different hardiness zones. So check where you live and check what's your hardiness zone. And this is a really important information because plants are also categorized into those hardiness zones. For example, if we take a heuchera has hardiness zones, is best grown, in other words, between zone 4 and 9. So what that means is that the coldest winters heuchera can survive outside are in zone 4. That doesn't mean that you can't grow it in colder zones. It just means that in colder zones, it's not going to be a perennial because it's not going to survive winter outside. So you will have to either bring it indoors or provide some sort of frost protection. But then there's also that upper zone, that's zone 9. And that means that in warmer climates above zone 9, winters are simply not cold enough, because many plants actually need that cold winter dormancy to kind of, slow down a little bit so that they can come back again next spring and perform beautifully in our garden. So for example, for heuchera, zone 4 through 9, as I said, doesn't mean that you can't grow it in colder climates, just means it will not survive, it will not be a perennial plant in colder climates. And the same goes for many other plants, like for example dahlias. Dahlias are best grown outside in zone 8 through 11, but here again, it doesn't mean that in zones colder than 8 you can't grow them. It just means that you can't leave them outside because they will not survive winter outside in those colder climates. But the good point about dahlias is that they have a storing organ, tubers, so we can dig them up at the end of the season and store them and grow them again next year. Alright, I hope that you found this video helpful. Thanks so much for watching and happy gardening!